The Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was fantastic, and of course it was. I mean, you can't really go wrong with an HD remake of the original Crash trilogy. Plus, to sweeten the pot even more, it's only $40 friggin'. And since Activision also owns the rights to Spyro the Dragon, it was only a matter of time before they announced the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, seeing how with the exception of this loser right here, fans of Crash Bandicoot also love that dang purple dragon from the PS1. I mean, Activision would be stupid not to make a game that's guaranteed to sell millions of copies and make everybody happy at the same time, because it's getting two birds stoned at once, and there's no way they could possibly botch remastering the original Spyro trilogy, right? Well, hold Activision's beer, because that's exactly what they're gonna do by making it to where if you buy a physical copy of Spyro Reignited, then you're only really getting a copy of the first game with download codes for the other two, and it should be obvious why that's terrible. But if you're typing up a storm in the comments section right now because you think I'm just gonna duke all over digital games, then I'll kindly ask that you hold that thought, sit back, relax, open up a can of hot dog sauce, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the award-winning Cameron of the FUgameCrue, to explain why the physical distribution of the Spyro Reignited Trilogy is awful for gaming as a whole. If you've been following this channel for a while, then you'd know how I feel about Capcom giving us half-assed physical releases of the Mega Man and Resident Evil compilations on the Switch, seeing as how, much like Spyro Reignited, half the content of those games were digital downloads. And for those of you waiting to berate me in the comments who don't get why this is bad, my gripe lies in the fact that having incomplete games on physical media defeats the entire purpose of getting off my couch and driving my fat ass to Radio Shack to buy a game, because at that point I might as well just download it digitally, which is why I'm sure a lot of people are puzzled at my complaints. I mean, having large day one downloads makes physical games pointless anyway, so why not just go digital entirely and stop being so butthurt over missing content on discs and cartridges? But the reason physical media and gaming's fading away is because companies are consciously trying to make their physicals suck more and more to brainwash us into thinking digital makes more sense. And don't get me wrong, digital's great and has a lot of advantages over physical, but I don't think it's out of line to ask that physical games be fully playable without any significant day one patches. I mean, imagine buying a game digitally and then downloading half of it only to be told that you have to go to a store and pick up a physical copy to unlock the rest. Granted, that'd be much worse, but it's in the same ballpark of incomplete games being put into stores. I'm not against day one patches sprucing things up a bit and fixing minor issues, but until the internet allowed developers to be lazy, this was never an issue. And as much as I hate how Capcom's handled most of their Switch compilations, they look like saints compared to what Activision's doing with Spyro on the PS4 and Xbox One. And if we the consumers keep allowing this, then it's only gonna get worse and worse as time goes on. And I have to stress that this really isn't all that much about digital versus physical, because while I don't like the idea of all games being digital at some point because it takes power away from us, I can't say that a publisher making a game exclusively for a digital download makes them a dick. It's just that if you're gonna sell the game physically, then put the full damn thing on the disc, you butt asses. And that goes for compilations missing content, as well as games requiring massive day one patches, because publishers would rather play hide the pickle with their uncles rather than give developers more time to finish projects before mass producing them. But Spyro Reignited's not a case of send it out now and finish it later, nor is it the same as Capcom being lazy and or cheap with how they distribute Switch games either. The reason Spyro's being separated is most likely Activision's attempt at fighting the used games market. And I don't blame them for wanting to prevent GameStop and people on eBay from siphoning money, but it's really hard to justify Activision's methods when they're not even giving us 2 out of the 3 games. Even the Sly Cooper collection on the Vita gave us 2 out of the 3. Besides, I just think there's much better ways to encourage people to buy your games than to just flat out be a dick to the consumer, let alone to be an even bigger dick than Capcom, because they at least have cases to be made in their defense, with Nintendo Switch cartridges being relatively costly for games over 8 gigabytes. I mean, the Mega Man X collection got 2 discs for the PS4 and Xbox One after all. Plus, Japan still got physicals of both games on the Switch, as well as the botched half and half cart, but physical media is much more popular over there, which also makes Capcom's methods in the US and ass hair more forgivable. Besides, all of Capcom's compilations on the Switch have technically been 2 full games, with 1 being on the card and 1 being for download. So at the very least, the cartridges aren't technically missing content for the games that are on the labels. You didn't have to download anything for the Street Fighter collection after all, since it was technically 1 game. So even though I still think Capcom's screwing the consumer over on the Nintendo Switch, at least they're only doing it on the Switch, where Nintendo is partially to blame. And I can't talk too much poop, because I did cave and buy a physical copy of the X collection on the Switch, so I could take it with me on the go. But even though I did get 20% off, I still regret it, because it basically tells Capcom and other developers that they could behave this way, and I should have just got the PS4 version instead. However, unlike the Mega Man and Resident Evil collections technically all being 2 separate games, Activision's not releasing 2 separate Spyro collections, and for Capcom to divide collections into 2 is pretty lame in the first place, but it's even worse that all 3 Spyro games are essential to 1 compilation. It's not the same as the Fractured But Whole coming with a bonus download code for the Stick of Truth. So if Activision's not going to put the entire individual game on a disc, disc, then just release it as a digital exclusive and stop being a jabroni about it. And since we all know the reason for separating games is definitely not because a Blu-ray can't fit all the information, and since we can be pretty damn sure that it's not a case of an incomplete game being sent out with a mandatory day one update, then we can confirm that the only reason for releasing a physical copy of a game that's 2/3 digital is to prevent people from reselling it. And to make matters worse, those buttholes can't even admit that's what they're doing. An Activision representative said, as with most games today, downloading an update after purchase is quite common. The language on the packaging and on the webs to let players know the requirements for the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which is essentially a corporate way of saying, "Aw, come on guys, you just bent over and accepted it when other companies did it to you. So you know what, that's what we're gonna do." And that's the biggest problem. That companies know they can get away with it, so they're pushing their shadiness a little further, which is how we got where we are now. It started off with physical copies coming with codes for bonus DLC that doesn't impact the main game, and then it evolved into paid DLC actually being on the discs, which is pretty lame considering that games used to just come with bonus content, and to unlock it you'd have to play and get better. And before we knew it, games were being released that were unplayable without day one patches, making those physical copies useless in a post-apocalyptic world. And now we're at a point where 2/3 of the game's missing from the discs, which subconsciously makes us more accepting of lesser evils that shouldn't exist in the first place. I mean, here I am talking about how Capcom releasing half-and-half physicals isn't so bad in comparison, when even that's unacceptable. If you bought a physical copy of the complete series of Family Matters Z on Blu-ray, then I'd wager you'd be rather displeased to find out that the box set only contains the first season with a digital download code for the second and third seasons that you can only use one time on one device. And if Blu-rays even tried something like that, then it'd be Hell Century all rolled into one day up in here. In fact, a lot of Blu-rays also come with DVDs or a digital download code for some reason. But somehow I'm insane for thinking full games need to be on discs or cartridges, even though this wouldn't be tolerable before the PS3 and Xbox 360. Slowly but surely, a lot of people were convinced that it's perfectly fine. I mean, if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out immediately. But if you put a frog in tepid water and slowly raise the temperature, it'll stick around and boil to death, which is what many companies have been trying to do for some time now. And with the inevitable comments this video is going to get from people who are just going to tell me I'm stupid for wanting physical games anyway, I'd say that it's working. And again, I'm not against people who prefer digital. I see the advantages of it, and for certain games like my 30th copy of Mega Man X, I actually prefer it myself sometimes. And I can totally understand why one wouldn't want to leave their condo to buy a physical game. But if you're a sensible person, then you'd see the benefits of physical copies even if you personally hate them. Like, if you buy a game that ends up sucking, then you can just sell it and get most of your money back as long as you use eBay over GameStop. And not to mention you have the option to borrow games as well. Remember how pissed everyone got when Xbox One tried taking that away from us? Well, the water's been boiling since then, I guess, because it seems like no one cares anymore. And I do understand that borrowing and selling games can hurt developers, which is bad, and I'm aware that businesses are trying to make money. But to prevent this, then I'd suggest people use Nintendo's philosophy and make games that people don't want to resell in the first place. And I'm sure saying that's going to end up with comments of fanboy being jammed up that mysterious hole in my lower back area that oozes a substance that tastes awful. But if you look at how much great games on eBay sell for compared to their retail prices, whether they be from Nintendo or not, and compare them to how well the good games sell, then you'd realize that it just might be a good idea to make games that people want to keep, and that your business can thrive without screwing the consumer over while coming off as a greedy whole ass in the process. Don't get me wrong, Nintendo can be some greasy bastards as well, but at least they understand how to make physical media, which is why they were putting those beautiful warning labels on boxes for incomplete games. Sadly, those don't seem to be there anymore, but by God, they should be. And I hope they put a label like that on Spyro as well, so people know what they're getting into if they see a copy at retail, which is surely the reason why Activision wants the game in stores rather than just on Xbox Live or the PSN. So people can make impulse buys at Funko Land and essentially be stuck with the game, since Activision basically wants to carry over the no backseats rule from digital. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And it'll be as interesting as it is scary to see how well physical copies of this game sell on the PS4 and Xbox One, because if it sells better than Crash with the shady tactics, then other companies are sure to follow suit. Sadly, it's too late for me to not buy the Mega Man X collection, even though I honestly wish I could. And since what Activision's doing with the physical copies of Spyro Reignited is actually worse, then I can't bring myself to buy the game even though I was really excited for it, because if the game sells poorly or at least considerably less than the Insane Trilogy, then it'll teach companies to stop screwing us over, and hopefully when the game comes to the Switch, Activision will come to their senses and put all 3 games on one cartridge like Crash. And if you think the game's not coming to the Switch, or at least won't if it doesn't sell well on other consoles, then think again, because as of August, the Insane Trilogy is the fastest selling Switch game of 2018, and if Activision were to actually put all 3 games on a Switch cartridge, then it'd be guaranteed to sell twice as fast as your ass. And even with the malarkey, I'm sure it'll still sell well on the PS4 and Xbox One, since there's more than enough gamers out there who either haven't realized or don't care that the water they're in is getting hotter and hotter. But realistically, I just hope there's enough people out there who take a stand, and that these shenanigans cause Activision to lose a noticeable amount of sales so companies take notice. And since I'm a Nintendo fan man, maybe that'd result in the inevitable Switch version being done right. What do you think about the physicals of Spyro Reignited only containing a third of the actual game? If you only buy digital anyway, do you at least understand the frustration? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining or intriguing. Don't forget to like and share this video to help this channel grow. A huge thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. And if you're a super badass and cool sexy beast, then press the subscribe button if you haven't joined the club already. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty. Thank you for your support.
You're gonna die, clown! You think that's funny? I don't hear you laughing now!
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Enough.